Well, for many farmers, this is a harvest they'd like to forget. It was a late start in the spring, and it's turning into a late and long harvest this fall.
And with climate change, it may just be a sign of what's to come. Tom Lyden is here with a look at what the changing weather patterns mean for farmers, Tom.
Right. Kelsey, Randy, in a normal year, the harvest would be mostly over, and yet here we are with plenty of corn and sugar beets still in the fields. In Minnesota, we have weather data going back to 1820, pioneer records from Fort Snelling. What we are seeing this year and in the last few is unprecedented in 200 years of meteorological data. And get ready, because it's just beginning. It's been a year like none other for Minnesota farmers.
These are cows floating down the river.
A deluge of rain in southern Minnesota.
Poor cattle.
And a flash flood that swept dozens of cows down a river. And the rain never seemed to stop. Late getting into the fields, farmers left 1 million acres of corn unplanted. When it comes to weather, the new normal is anything but.
You have no idea if we're going to be hot, dry, wet.
As if things weren't bad enough for Minnesota farmers between low prices and tariffs, there's also the small matter of the weather. It has been a notoriously wet summer in Minnesota. Many farmers were late getting their crops in. Today is July 2nd, and this is corn. You've heard the expression knee high by the 4th of July. This corn isn't even close.
What we have now in the weather climate game is we have a weather trajectory. The inherent variability on our weather leash is longer. So when the weather wanders, it has the capability to wander more profoundly in either direction.
Mark Seeley, a climatologist with the U of M, has been watching Minnesota weather patterns for 40 years. Our climate, he says, is at a crossroads, and it's a story of extremes.
So when it gets wet, it gets wetter. When it gets dry, it gets drier. We're in a wet cycle right now, though, that is almost unparalleled in our measured climate history.
In fact, this has been Minnesota's wettest year on record, and it's a trend. 16 of the last 17 years have been well above average for rainfall. It's also getting warmer, or more precisely, not as cold. Winter low temperatures are up by 4 to 6 degrees, a significant increase, and seasons of -40 are becoming less frequent. But for farmers, a brutal winter is nature's pesticide.
The good old Minnesota old-fashioned winter won't inflict the high levels of mortality on these pathogens, microbes, and insects that it used to.
Those bugs may not only survive winter, they'll appear earlier in the spring, maybe in April instead of May. And summer temps, especially nighttime lows, are getting warmer too. That could mean a longer growing season with potentially higher yields for corn and soybeans. But again, the crops will have company.
Certain insect species, certain pests, if you will, plant pathogens, disease spores, insect pests, love warm nights.
10 years ago, we hardly ever saw that beetle, and they've been ramping up the last couple of years, and this year is actually the most I've seen.
Brent Fuchs says he's seeing it already, like the Japanese stink beetle chewing on his soybeans. Farmers are seeing more soybean fungi, like frog eye leaf spot and white mold. And the corn fungi, southern rust and tar spot, were both recently discovered in Minnesota for the very first time. And it's just beginning. Climate change will impact everything from the seeds farmers plant to the pesticides they use. From 200 years of weather data, we know the pace of climate change is now accelerating. Latitude is no longer destiny. The new normal is here.
What we're not going to see is a sudden abatement of this. It's not suddenly going to stop.
To some extent, even the phrase "the new normal" really misses the mark. Farmers simply don't have experience with such massive variations over the long term, and we're not even sure what this new normal really looks like yet. Ian and I have been talking about this really for the last couple of months, and I think what strikes me is that the pace of change is really increasing, and it also matches some of these computer models, right?
Yeah, the signals aren't going away. As a matter of fact, the climate change signals are getting stronger by the year, by the long-range model run. You look at the last 100 years, we've picked up over 3 inches of average annual precipitation in the Twin Cities. Statewide, since 1950, our average annual temperature is up over 3 degrees. You know, as a meteorologist, we look for fractions of that, and we'd be alarmed. We're looking at massive numbers here. As I mentioned, the signals are getting stronger.
And to underscore the issue, it will change everything about farming, from seeds to pesticides to techniques.
Isn't it hard, though, sometimes to get the message through, whatever that message is, when we have these, it's too cold in November, it's too cold in October.
And it is, and
we talk about warming.
There's a confusion of weather and climate. Weather is something we deal with every day. Climate happens over hundreds, thousands of years. So we could have a winter where you say, wow, it feels like old time, but it's just a blip on a very large scale. And it's that signal that keeps getting stronger and stronger. We're supposed to be good stewards of the earth. What I think Tom did so well with this piece is talk about what's happening here in Minnesota. And really brought it home so we can think more and more about it.
Yeah. And how much we need that cold weather.
We've talked to them, yeah. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Tom.